Thank you. Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. As Eric said, my name is Greg. Before I start, you probably hear from the accent. Although I live in New Jersey, I'm actually British. I'm a Londoner, so I'm still working on the New Jersey accent, but it's taken a little bit of time. Today I'm going to talk to you about learning the hard way, how to fail and then succeed. So when you get asked to do these sorts of talks, you often go back and you reminisce over what's happened through your career and personal life. And what's so interesting is you nearly always go to the failures first, because they're the most interesting bits, but also they're where you learn the most. So I'm going to talk you through mine today. So if you cast your mind back in time, I tried to think about where I was when I was an undergraduate. And as Eric said, I was a history and archaeology major. So I went into it with no plan. So my plan was not really there, but I knew three things. I knew I needed a good degree from a good college, so I could get a good job, which meant I could get good money, which meant I could live in London. So that was my plan at the age of 18. That's all I knew. And the reason for archaeology was it was my favorite subject, that and history at high school. So I had the best teacher on it, I loved it. So I thought, well, I'll do a degree I enjoy, I'll do something I love. I thought going in it would be Indiana Jones, it'd be like hurling around. It actually looked like this, and that big hole in the top left corner, if you're a big guy, is all you do in archaeology, you dig holes. You dig, 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 and everyone else who's slightly better with a trowel looks after human remains. So this is where my journey started. This was in 2003. And now I sell and market the world's leading lubricant. So again, when you take a step back and you think about kind of your journey, it feels a bit weird. And I was discussing this with my wife, Zoe, and she was like, you probably need to explain the in-between bits because it doesn't quite make sense. But right now, I'm the Area Ecommerce Director of Reckitt Benckiser, RB, and we make KY, we make Durex, Mucinex, and Enfamil. So my day-to-day job is going to retailers like Walmart, like we did earlier today at 11, with people like Ryan, who stood in the back. And we talked to him about how we need to build a great strategy to make sure that every baby is nourished the best way for their first 1,000 days with Walmart. So that's what I do now. As you can tell by the days, it's been 5,026 days since I've graduated, which means I'm old, even to the point where I didn't get my first smartphone when I was in college. So I'm going to talk you through the journey that got me there. And what's interesting is when you look through all this, there's a couple of key moments in the last 14 years for me that really kind of defined how I ended up here, both personally and professionally. And it all started with an interview rejection. So hands up who's failed an interview before? Well done. It was good effort. So I left college. I went to a good college. I had a good degree. I left, and I signed up to one of the graduate schemes to try and apply for a big major corporation. So typically, some of you may be looking to do the same. And because I was at a good college with a good degree, and I've been lucky enough to have a pretty simple and easy life, I thought that with a bit of natural charm, a good degree, a nice suit, that I could kind of just like cruise my way through it and blag it and get in. And I got down to the final stages doing that, but then I ended up at a final stage. So 12 people and 6 roles. And what happens when you get to these final stages at big businesses is you become acutely aware of who's practiced, who's prepared, and who really wants a job. And I'd done none of the three. So I sat there, and I knew immediately I'm in a lot of trouble here, because everyone else around me knew so much more than me. They were so much more prepared. They were so much more nervous. And I got to the final stage interview, and I was sat with a marketing director called Johan, and he just looked at me and was silent for about 20 seconds. So it was a little bit like Apprentice. You just sat there like nervous in a way. And he just looked at me and said, you don't really want to work here. You just want a good job. And I froze. I was like, God, he's smart. That's exactly right, like exactly what I'm thinking. And I froze and I BS'd my way through a few responses like, no, of course I want to work here. And I'd read the front page of a website, that's as far as I'd gone. But, look at my degree, I've got a smart suit and all this sorts of stuff. So I failed it and I froze and I failed and I went home. And for people that don't know what failure looks like, and a few of you have felt it, it's really cold. So this is the letter. So I'll give you a couple of moments to look at it. It's dated 2007. It was delivered to my parents' home in Marlow, Buckinghamshire. And this is what rejection looks like. It's a corporate letter with no feelings, a quick thank you, because you have to, signed by an HR director called Mary Calvert, telling me that I am, after a difficult decision, I ain't good enough. And what's interesting about when you fail, and what's interesting about rejection is, the feeling you get when you fail can be very different. And in this case, when I hadn't prepared, and I hadn't really gone through any sort of process to really want that job, the biggest feeling I felt was a massive gut failure because I'd let myself down. And I sat on the stairs at my parents' house in 2007, and I told them that I hadn't got it. And it was just a feeling of embarrassment because I hadn't even tried. I deserved to not get this. Now, what's ironic about this for us, which is really nice, is if you look at the logo at the top of the company, that's what our company logo used to be. So I'm Greg, an area e-commerce director for Reckitt Benckiser, who failed their grad scheme, and I work for them now. So it was a lovely come-to moment about wanting stuff and rejection, and a real important point to me to prove that it doesn't matter how privileged you are, and it doesn't matter how lucky you are. And for those in the room that don't think you're lucky, if you open your eyes and see what you've got around here, and how amazing this place is, and how amazing the teachers are and the faculty, and the fact you've got the world's most biggest and impressive retailer literally just there, you're in a very, very privileged position if you look at the rest of the world. So what does that teach you? It teaches you to hustle, and it teaches you the most important thing, which is about attitude. So the classic line here, which any of you who play sports will always be told about by any coach, but the most important thing is be world-class at things that don't require talent. Prepare, have the right attitude in a room. When people talk to you, listen. Make sure that in any situation that you've got where you're put into it, you work harder than the person in the room. And ironically, the higher you go in business and the higher you make it for an organization, the more important this becomes. The smartest person in the room is not the most important, it's the person that hustles the most. I love this picture because this is exactly it. It's not about winning Olympic medals, it's about hitting the tarmac at 6 a.m. and going for that run when you're really tired just to free your head for the day. Cool. So you fail at interviews and then you get slightly better at them because you sucked at the first one. My next goal in 2012 was to work for one of the 4 biggest companies or most impressive companies, which I had defined in my head, in the world. And in 2012, they weren't that different to what they are now. It was Facebook, it was Apple, it was Amazon, or it was Google. And so I made it a personal mission to work for one of those 4. That's something I wanted to do. I wanted to prove that I could be at that level to work for these guys. So I went back to business school. I studied at MMU, as Eric said. I studied for internet retailing and did my master's in that. And then I got through to the Amazon stages in an interview. So is anyone aware of Amazon interviews and how they work? Has anyone ever read about them? Okay, so the interesting thing about Amazon interviews, or the 2 interesting things, firstly, your likelihood of succeeding is so low. So on average, at a final interview, so you do 5 stages before, and then you get to the final interview, your chances of passing the final interview are 4%. And what's great about Amazon is they tell you that as you walk in the room. They sit you down and go, welcome to Amazon. Just to let you know, 4 out of 100 people will get offered a job. The other 96 will go home. And you kind of sit there and go, okay. Luckily, because I've prepared myself to the nth degree, I'm in a good position where I feel like, well, at least I can give it my best go, and if I don't get there, I don't get there. So I walk into the interview room. There's 6 people of all different levels, and all 6 of them have to say yes. And then they interview you for 4 hours. So I can run a marathon quicker than the Amazon interview. I remember thinking that as I was going out, and I remember giving them information from my top pocket of my blazer, and it was just soaked with sweat because I was just under it for 4 hours. First question in the interview was pretty straightforward. It was, you see the size of this room? If I put a hose pipe in it, how long would it take to fill? To the minute. And I was like, huh? I come prepared with all my different notes, and they were trying to make you and force you to think a different way. But the point was, because I prepared so well for it, because I was in a position where I'd really learned it, and it was really obvious I wanted it, I got the job. And I became an Amazonian in 2012, and I worked there for 2 years in the UK division, buying toys and games for them as a vendor manager. But it was the wrong company. And what I didn't know at the time that I do know now, is that you tend to pick companies based off prestige. I want to work for Procter & Gamble, I want to work for Coke, I want to work for Amazon, Google, Apple, whoever. And it was a mistake. And the mistake is, if you pick a company based on your ambition, not your beliefs, you're putting yourself in a very, very, very risky position of hating it. and I did not enjoy my Amazon experience. So it isn't that I wouldn't take it back or it didn't give me a lot, but if I looked at Amazon's culture, if I looked at their values and then looked at mine, they're diametrically opposed. This image you can see here pretty much sums it up for me. Me on the right, needy, love me. Amazon on the left, we don't love you. As simply put as that. But Amazon's whole vision and everything they want is to empower machines to do humans' jobs. It's about offering the best single thing for a customer. It's about being the best retailer in the world, having Earth's largest selection, blah, 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 all the things. But to do that, they take the human out of it. They didn't believe in things like teamwork. They didn't believe in things like empathy. I sat next to an associate vendor manager of mine whose grandma had died, and she was told that if she went to the funeral, she would lose her job because there was another 100 people waiting for the job out of the way. Now, for some people, if you're a software developer or you want to work in something that's just pure data, it can work. I know lots of people there who have absolutely loved it, but for me, it didn't. And the mistake that I made was I didn't understand my values or beliefs. I had no idea as a 27-year-old man what the hell I was about and what it meant. And I would go to these sorts of lectures and I'd hear people talk about values and purpose and belief, and I wouldn't really connect with it in any sort of way. And what I realized was I needed to find a company where the way they work culturally is in tune with what I want to do. So what do you do if you don't know your culture, if you don't know your beliefs and values? You learn them. You sit down, you go into yourself, and you find ways to do this. So you can find many ways to do this online. Or find a really good mentor, or go and ask the faculty staff. And you can build what your beliefs are. And then what you do when you go to interviews with really big companies, you grade them against those things. So if you look on the board there, TAMPA, which is mine, teamwork, ambition, making a difference, positivity, and action, are the things that are really important to me. They're my beliefs and purposes. The other things you see on the screen are quotes or snippets that I really believe in. And if I matched Amazon to it, there's probably 4 of the 15 right there. So about a quarter of what I believe is really important is there. The rest isn't. Then I leave Amazon. I have the ability to work anywhere, endless possibilities, because once you're an Amazonian, you get a lot of job offers. And I chose to work for KY, a company that talks about vaginal health all day, something I had no idea on. And the reason I worked there is because when I put them against this, every single bit of the interview and the questions I asked were about this. Because I'm not pointing or I'm not thinking about the purpose of RB, shareholder value, improving the healthcare of American people. That's a difficult thing to align with when you're a Brit. It's difficult, you know? But what I do align to is the fact that the team and what they're trying to do perfectly matches where I want to be and the sort of people I want to work with. And because of that, that means I can go to Walmart with people like Ryan, and I can be incredibly passionate and feel incredibly connected to the purpose, because that was my version of what's important to me. Make sense? So choose the right company. Your beliefs, not theirs. Which gets me to the third piece, which is false fail. Because once you start failing a few times, you realize that some of it isn't failure, part of it's a journey, and part of it's where you're going. And the most important thing I learned from failing interviews and picking the wrong company was it's your reaction to the failure that defines whether you're going to be successful or not. Because success itself is just happiness. And again, for each of you, that will mean a different definition, and it will evolve over time as you move through your careers and move through your personal life. So they become false fails. And a false fail is effectively something that's actually very important that happened. If I'd bothered or I'd blagged that RB interview, I may have been stood here in the same position as I am now with the same job, but I wouldn't have been anywhere near as hardworking or dedicated. I could have got fired, I could have gone anywhere you want. So that was a really good thing that happened to me. Going to work for Amazon was an incredibly important thing that happened for me, because I learned a lot, and I also learned that I needed to think about companies in a different way. So your reaction is the most important thing. And when people look at your career, they see a title, and they kind of define you on that. And then below that is all the stuff you go through. So these were some of the, I guess, my highlights. I lost $4.5 million in a day. That was a bad day. It's just silly money. Ryan's lost much more. If you talk to Ryan at the back, he runs a $500 million business with Walmart, so he's much worse off than I am. But I've done all sorts. I balanced business school terribly with my personal life. I wasn't clear on what I wanted. I was a classic boy. I didn't listen and I didn't communicate. Still guilty in a lot of ways with that. And I wasn't able to do any of these things, but it's how you react to those things that's so important. And you need to make a really conscious decision when you're really hurting and you've failed. Did I try my hardest? Yes. How am I going to react? If you didn't try your hardest, you need to feel that pain. You need to feel it in the gut, because it's incredibly important that you don't go and do that again. There's always second chances. So I'll finish on this slide. Does anyone in the room know what this is? Anyone? Do we have any history or archaeology people in the room? Lacking. Cool kids, archaeologists. We're the cool kids on campus, 100%. So this is two things. Firstly, it's a way of me trying to bridge back to archaeology to try and keep the presentation coherent. If you go to any PowerPoint classes, they will talk about that. The second element here is, this is from Socrates, and this is an inscription from a temple of Delphi in 300 BC. And it's know thyself. And the biggest gift I can give you guys is that if you understand yourself and you work hard and make sure that no one in a room is outworking you, if you make sure that you understand your beliefs, that is the key to passion and purpose. And then finally, if you allow yourself to fail and understand that the reaction's more important, you will be happy. And you will probably define happiness in lots of different ways. It will maybe be a title, it might be money, but I promise you, as you get older and older and older, it's just about how content you feel that you are living a purposeful life. And that can mean anything to anyone in the room. Cool. That's it. Thank you.